Morning, everyone. So yeah, as Dan just said, I'm going to be talking about user experience, how we can use this to maximize conversions on your website. We'll have a Q&A session at the end, so keep questions in mind. But to sort of introduce myself, so I'm James. Yes, my surname is Grizzly, just like the bear, just slightly spelled differently. But I'm senior digital marketer as part of the digital transformation team at Wagner, also known as DTT. Now, within our team, we largely focus on new website builds for our clients, but we also help them in and support them in elevating their website. I've got a background in SEO, and so I can't tell you how many times how many websites I reviewed in my time at Wagner. You know, if I had a pound for every SEO audit I've done, be a very rich man. But as you can see on the screen, I've got a QR code that will take you to my LinkedIn profile. So feel free to connect with me. You know, I'm getting closer to the magic 500 plus connections mark. I'm on 435, so I'm getting a bit closer. But yeah, if you could help me get to that goal, that'd be awesome. But yeah, anyway, that's enough about me. And before I start, you know, I think it's important to mention that there's so many elements to user experience that it's impossible to cover everything within an hour. But I'm going to try and cover some of the essentials that you need to know. So some of the things you're going to be learning throughout this webinar are understanding the importance of user experience and how you can identify and analyze user behavior, and then how to make your website easy to navigate, how you can then start to implement conversion focused CTAs or call to actions, and then how we can make your content digestible and engaging for your users. So, as I say, we'll start off by covering why user experience is so important. And it's important for a number of reasons, and particularly for customer satisfaction. When users find a product or service easy to use and they find it efficient, they're more likely to buy your product or inquire about your services. And you know, if they like using your site, that might mean that they want to come back, which is great for customer retention. So with that in mind, this means your site needs to be compatible and responsive on all devices. And I'll talk about this a little bit later on. But getting your user experience right will also give you an edge over your competitors, especially when you think today how many websites there are out there. And this becomes even more important when you think about this, and that's the 7 second rule. So did you know that the human attention span is actually shorter than a goldfish's? So according to Tribute Media, a goldfish's attention span is about 9 seconds, whereas humans we're only about 7 seconds. So your website's got a lot of work to do in a really short amount of time. You know, consider whether a user visiting your site can understand what it's about straight away. Does it capture their interest straight away? And does it show them where they need to go straight away? And before you start checking your Wi-Fi, I know the webinar is not frozen. This is just a GIF. But when you think about it, even 7 seconds is quite a long time. You know, have you ever come across, I like to call this the circle of doom. I think, Dan, you like to call it pizza of death. Is that right? I think so. But yeah, imagine seeing that seeing this on your screen for 1, 2, 3. You know, that's not even anywhere near 7 seconds, but it feels like an eternity, and it's going to put you off. And it just goes to show that you know your website really does have a lot of work to do in just a really short amount of time. So that's why user experience is really important. But analyzing and identifying user behavior is a really crucial part of creating that user-friendly experience. And understanding how users interact with your product or service it will start to help you make informed decisions to enhance that experience. So a few things to consider are start off by setting clear objectives for your user experience research. So what specific aspects of user behavior are you trying to understand, or what are you trying to improve? You could be looking for navigation patterns, you could be looking at click-through rates, you could be looking at conversion rates. And then depending on your objectives, you can then decide on the right tools, right methods for data collection. So common tools and methods include web analytics tools. You know, you've got your classic like Google Analytics. You can use surveys, you can use heat maps, you've got session recordings. But you can use these tools to start to analyze page views, unique visitors, conversion rate. And for those that don't know what conversion rate might mean, that's the percentage of users who complete a desired action. So that's a desired action is essentially inquiring or buying about your service or product. You can start to look at click-through rates. You can have a look at average session duration. So when and where are users leaving your site? So you can start to analyze this data to identify trends and patterns in your users' behavior. And as you're analyzing this data, you can then start to develop user personas. So what are their goals? What's their pain points? Personas help you understand users and their motivations. Now, I touched on this a minute ago, but heat maps and session recordings provide visual representations of where users click and how they're navigating the site or how long they're spending on a page. And programs such as Hotjar you might be familiar with, and also Microsoft Clarity, they're perfect for this kind of data. And then with this data, obviously, you can start to look for patterns and identify different opportunities or any issues that your users might be facing. And you can also do this with A/B testing. So you can start to compare different versions of your product or your website to determine which design elements are more effective than others. You know, one CTA at the bottom of a page might be more effective than a CTA higher up on a page. And that's what Airbnb did. I came across this really interesting case study they did, which is all around user behavior. So they noticed that there were roughly about 1.5 million photos being sent from hosts to guests each week, which included information on location and entry details getting into the property that they were staying at. And the Airbnb team realized that there was a huge opportunity to make this exchange much more seamless and much more consistent. And that led to them kicking off a project to design a global check-in tool for their platform, which spanned across roughly about over across a year. Um, and this is how it looks. So this tool enables hosts to sort of create a visual check-in guide for their guests. So they can now, this is across their website, their desktop, their tablets, their mobile apps. So hosts can upload photos and instructions. And the other really interesting thing that I took from this case study was that the tool translates information based on their guests' preferred language. You know, not everyone's going to be based in the UK. They're not all going to be English speaking. And they also made sure that these guides could be accessed both online and offline. So, you know, just in case you didn't have access to Wi-Fi or your data was a bit rubbish, you're in the middle of nowhere. I know that's happened to me a few times. But yeah, pretty handy, right? It seems so obvious now, but this change was only possible because they started to analyze and had a look at their user behavior. And even after they launched the tool, Airbnb continued to observe how hosts were using it, and they were able to flag issues. They were able to identify further design opportunities, and that meant they continued to adapt and evolve this check-in tool all the time. And that ties in with this great LinkedIn post that I came across the other day, and I think it perfectly sums up how user behavior is not static. You know, there is no such thing as a perfect website. Remember to regularly review and monitor your users' interactions and adapt your user experience design based on this. So you've done your testing, and that should give you an idea of how users are moving around your site and behaving on your site. And using this data, you now want to make sure that your website's easy to navigate.
James, sorry, just on
Yeah.
that, I've had a question come through regarding cookie policies. So,
Mm-hmm.
with with these testing tools, if we're using Hotjar, if we're using any of these kind of testing tools, somebody's asked what impact does that have in terms of customer data and that side of things. Do you have anything on that in terms of perhaps what people should be thinking about in terms of privacy policies, cookie
Mm-hmm.
policies, or how to make sure that they're covered for any of those kind of tools?
Yeah, so it's really important to, especially with Hotjar and Clarity, these kind of tools, just make a disclaimer note in your privacy policies and your cookie policies, just to say that by accepting these cookies, that data will be tracked. But
Yeah.
obviously you can manage these preferences. You know, we were working with one of our clients, Cloud Attribution, uh, who have set up Microsoft Clarity, and they set it up, but we just wanted to establish that, before we do that, we need to make sure that that's included and highlighted in the cookie policy, just to make sure that, and let users know that their data
Yeah.
will be used to
Yeah.
see how their behavior is and how they're
Yeah.
being monitored.
Interesting. Makes sense. Thanks, James.
Yeah, no worries. But yeah, so a good place to start with navigating the site is using a clear navigation menu at the top of the website. And that's typically what you'll find in the header. So here's an example from one of our clients, Pixtope, they're an international software company who specialize in virtual production. They do some really cool stuff. I really recommend checking out their site. But with the menu nav, try to use familiar labels like about, services, products, and even contact, just to help users quickly find what they're looking for straight away. But having an effective menu navigation is also great for SEO, as it helps search engine crawlers such as Google to crawl your site, as they're able to see a clear hierarchy straight away. But just keep in mind, don't overwhelm your users with loads of menu items. You can see on the screen there, I've dropped down solutions on Pixtope, and they've used submenu or a drop down, which kind of groups related pages into sections. So it just keeps it nice and tidy on the site. But just keep in mind to always think mobile and ensure that your website is responsive and mobile friendly. So just like on desktop, mobile users should also have a seamless navigation experience too. Your site may look great on a laptop on your work screen, but it might not on mobile. It is easy to forget because when we're all working at home, we're working in the office, we're all on laptops, we're all on desktops, on a much bigger screen. But you need to think to yourself, will my user, will my visitor to the site be on a laptop? They might be, but highly likely they're going to be home from work, just got in. They're not going to be getting out their laptop or their tablet. They're going to be on their phone, and they're going to be checking your site out. And I've got some interesting statistics just to back this up. So according to Zapier.com, 60% of website traffic worldwide comes from mobile devices. And between 2017 and 2022, global mobile data traffic increased by about a whopping 573%. And this number is only going to keep going up. But you'll notice on the graph, it's quite interesting to see that there's a slight dip across the 2019-2020 period, but that doesn't really come as a surprise because that's the year when COVID hit. Think about when you're on a train or waiting for someone outside a cafe. You're not gonna be on a tablet. You're not gonna be on your laptop. You're gonna be on your phone. No one was out and about during the COVID times. We're all at home binging Tiger King or whatever the shows were at the time. We were watching TV, and then laptop screens. We're not going to be watching everything on mobile. Oh, I remember those Zoom quizzes as well. Oh man, bad times. But but obviously since
You're
everything's
still
opened
doing
back
those,
up,
aren't you, James? Come on,
yeah,
tell the
yeah,
truth. You're still doing Zoom quizzes. You love a quiz.
love a quiz, love a quiz. But yeah, so since then everything's opened back up. Then you've seen the rise in mobile again, and so yeah, it's really important to make sure your site's functioning well on mobile. Um, sorry, I'm just going to go back, jumped ahead there, but to bear in mind how you can improve your mobile usability and how you can tap in and make the most of it. You can start to use burgers, these kind of burgers. I always gave you a sneak preview there, and they do look really good. But I'm not actually talking about these kind of burgers. I'm actually talking about burger menus, and they're called this because, well, they kind of look like them. If you look at the screen there on the menu we've got on the right there for Wagner, you've got your three lines. You've kind of got your buns on the outside, and then you've got your whatever you want in the middle, beef burger, whatever you want. But importantly, having these burger menus set up ensures that you have a never-ending list of menu items. But this function will still function in the same way as your desktop menu with sub-item menus and drop-downs. But interestingly, and this is sort of a new thing that we've come across, there's also a two-line burger menu, and we've utilized this on a couple of recent website launches we've done. So a few months back, this is one of our clients, Amful, who they provide fire and security protection. So we used this type of the two-line burger menu because it smoothly transitions into an X. So if you think you've got your two lines, and then as you click it, it hovers when you're on mobile, it hovers into a nice X. And this just gives the users an obvious option to easily close the burger menu when they finished using it. And that kind of ties into my next point, which is just to remember to ensure that these burger menus are easy for the user to open and close. And that's because when you open a burger menu, it tends to take up the full screen. Think about whenever you're on a phone and you tap it, it takes up the whole screen. So you want to make it obvious to the user how to close them, help them return to the page that they were on. Now, the other thing that's really important to consider is that burger menu should always be visible when users are scrolling up and down a page on mobile. But I can't tell you how many times I've reviewed websites and I've scrolled all the way down, and it could be a massive long blog or a really, a service page that's got loads and loads of content on. Only to find myself scrolling all the way down. I have to scroll all the way back up again to get to the burger menu. Now, to give you an example, if I went to check in on my five-side team, and I came across this, I'll scroll down on the page just to see who we've got next. By the way, my team's expected to lose. And then I've scrolled all the way down, but then I want to check the league table, but that's on another page. But there's no burger menu. Where do I go? I'm going to be looking like my mate John Travolta over there. Where do I go? Where do I go next? And that's going to make me end up um, leaving the page. And you know, remember, 7 seconds. Humans are lazy. We want something to be done instantly. Now, this is a bad example because I would scroll the way back up because I want to see that I'm still top of the league, but we're still top of the league, not I. But in fairness to our league, Watford, they do have a burger menu, much to the delight of my website reviewing hat on. So yeah, it means that I can easily find the league table and means see that we're still on top. And we should change our name really. We're not expected to lose. We're expected to win now.
Just
But
on that, James, Nathan's just popped a message in the chat, which is interesting, isn't it? Because obviously the whole concept of UX and moving up and down and engaging with content differs so much across platforms. Because like
mm,
Nathan's saying that on an iPhone, you can just tap the top of the window, and it's amazing, isn't it? Especially when you're dealing in big numbers or big traffic numbers, like on an e-commerce site, for example, where we don't just drill down by whether it's a mobile or a desktop, but actually what the usability is and what's happening across Android versus iPhone. You've even now you've got different versions of iPhone, so you're getting a different. I mean, I've got a mini, so I love the fact I can use it all in one hand. From a UX perspective, I want to be able to navigate a website where I'm literally all I need is the one thumb. Whereas there are the much larger devices where you've got your index involved and you've got, you know what I mean, all that,
that's
and
it.
that's an interesting thing, isn't it, in terms of how we can navigate across different devices, right? It's not just as simple as mobile versus desktop.
That's right. That's right. And it's a lot of people. I suppose most people probably have an iPhone, but there's a lot of Android users out there. They all function in different ways. So all
Yeah.
different screen sizes, all different pain points. So yeah, just something to bear in mind. Making sure that your site is responsive on all different sizes.
Yeah. Gaurav's raised a good question. Should we have a sticky burger menu on a mobile? So for mobile, should that be sticky so that as you're navigating through, especially if you're a site that's got quite deep kind of pillar content or large
Yeah,
breadths of content, should we be looking at the opportunity to have that as static rather than just when we're at the top of the page?
yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. You've got it as long as it's sticky and you can always see it wherever you are on the page. It's just a quick route. I've touched on the 7 seconds rule. You want to keep their attention, and it might take a couple of seconds, but scrolling a bit too far and being a bit lazy and not wanting to go back. It's really really important to consider to get those burger menus sticking on the mobile page. But yeah, really really important to bear in mind. Um, but yeah, anyway, that's enough about my five-a-side team. But I'd actually like to talk about visual hierarchy and Russian dolls. But hear me out on this. So think of them as different content heading styles. So you've got the big doll there. You've got your main title of the page in the form of a H1, and as you go down, you put your subheadings as H2s, H3s, and fours, and then you go all the way down to your tiny paragraph font, which is typically the main body of text on the page. And these types of headings, font styles, and color contrast, they all act as visual clues to establish a clear hierarchy of information. And it also adds a really nice flow to the content. It helps users to quickly identify the most important content straight away. But if I put my SEO hat back on again, using H tags also makes it really easy for search crawlers such as Google to crawl your content. Uh, and they can see the order of how your content should be displayed, making it easy to spot keywords. And this ultimately helps your site rank for certain user search queries that you want to target. But also getting internal links into your copy is important. And internal linking is great for continuing that user's journey on your site, giving them a trail to follow. But just bear in mind to use a consistent link styling with an on-brand color, as I implicit do in the example you can see on the screen, if you are one of our clients. And if you like, you can even underline the text. These are just two ways to help make your internal link stand out from regular text and helps users identify clickable elements. Now, I wanted to chat as well about external links, and these are one of my biggest pet peeves when I'm reviewing sites. So There's so many times when external links don't open in a new tab. Now, it's not, I mean, it's good that you've got these external links going and you've got the journey going and you're linking out to external sites for data and backing up points. But external links are, they don't have the same domain as your website. And in this example, this is from our blog here on our website about ChatGPT and AI. You can see that it's taken users to a site, blog.google. And by not turning on the open a new tab function there, you're taking users away from your site and you're effectively ending that user journey. So just remember to make sure that any external links you use are always set to open a new tab when users click on a link. And that's my rant over on that. But yeah, it's really important to bear in mind. But also be prepared for users potentially landing on missing pages or clicking on broken links. So it's important to have a clear 404 error page set up just in case of this. Now, although this example uses a cute little penguin, it's not very effective as it essentially takes users to a dead end with no obvious route out. Where do they go once they're there? However, this example from Mailtrap is way more effective. It gives some context to the users to why they've landed on the page, and it's also written in a friendly and human manner. Lots of 404 pages, they tend to be quite blunt and robotic. But crucially, it includes some really obvious links to take users back to the home page and keep them on your site and keep that user's journey going. And it's also important to ensure that your website is accessible to all users, including those with disabilities. And you can do this by using something called alt text. So for those that don't know, alt text is written copy that appears in place of an image if the image fails to load on a user screen, but it also describes images to visually impaired readers. But interesting, it also allows search engines to, when they crawl in your site and helps to rank your website. So when you're adding images and you're adding alt text to these images, don't just use yellow apple. Try to provide a bit more context and try to optimize these descriptions with keywords where possible. And the other element to consider when it comes to accessibility is and we've kind of touched this when you asked me earlier, Dan, is how responsive your website is on different devices and different screen sizes. So again, think mobile, but think of Apple, think of Android users. Not everyone's going to be on the same device. And not
Just on
everyone's
this, sorry,
yeah, go on,
James,
Dan.
sorry to interrupt. Just on this, we've got, and I think this is a really good question. It's really important. So James Clark's asking on images. We talked a little bit about alt text, but file names and how,
Mhm.
I mean, we know that's so important from an SEO perspective. Do you want to just talk through the relationship between file names? I guess good practice, bad practice.
Yeah,
So that whole piece in terms of optimizing for SEO from a file name perspective on images and
yeah,
things.
yeah, yeah. Again, you've got so with file names for images, a lot of sites tend to use stock imagery, and so you download that and you upload it straight away. But it's like a really random generated name and file name, which isn't great for Google or any search crawler. So whenever you've come up with an image, so if I like a slide and we've got this yellow apple, you could literally just call it man reaching for or person reaching for yellow apple. And it just makes it really obvious and it helps Google to understand what that image is all about. That's just best practice.
I think as much as you can as well, it's key to make sure that title convention matches any keyword targeting that you're doing for that page. So, for example, I mean, just using this example, I guess if you were I don't know, this is a bit of a crude example, but if you were a fruit and veg supplier, for example, and this page was focused on I don't know, on apples, and that you sold apples, you might call the image something that the page is optimized for, such as Apple distribution London or whatever, might actually be the image title, and then your alt text, which is the full description of it, might be hand reaching for an apple, yellow apple hanging from the tree. So it's amazing how much that is one of many kind of on-page ranking signals. So if your page is SEO optimized and you have content that's focused on visibility for a specific keyword, or I should say a specific group, a collection of keywords, then yeah, as much as you can, the images on that page, the page titles should then line up with but in a natural way, not in an unnatural way. You don't want to that's the key. We don't want to, and again, with
That's
the
it.
alt text, you don't want to force it in. But if there's an opportunity for a keyword to be in there, such as apple or apples, if the page is optimized for apples, then it makes sense for that to be part of the alt text, but only in a natural way. You don't want to just shoehorn in, I don't know, keywords if it doesn't make sense.
That's it. That's it. We
Yeah.
call it in our industry, don't we? We call it keyword stuffing.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah,
it. Yeah, you
keyword
don't want to be
stuffing.
keyword
So yeah,
stuffing. Yeah,
try
yeah,
not to stuff it in. Um, but yeah, going back to sort of imagery, certain certain image sizes and proportions, they may not look great on certain devices. On laptop, you might have a really nice landscape photo, but then as soon as it goes to mobile, it goes portrait and it squishes it and it goes all blurry, and that's something that you don't want to have. Um, but also big image files, they can slow down your site. And that can end up leading to that dreaded circle of doom or pizza of death, as as we touched on earlier. Now, if you've got your e-commerce hat on, there's a few tactics that you consider when it comes to navigating these kind of sites. And just to keep that food theme going, I touched on burgers earlier, but I'm going to start with a thing called breadcrumbs. So breadcrumbs show users their current location within the website's hierarchy, and they almost act as if they're leaving a trail for users to trace their steps. So that hence the name breadcrumbs. They're a great way for users to navigate between pages, especially if you're on an e-commerce site, they might have clicked on the wrong product page by accident and they want to go back a step, or they might change their mind about a product. And you can see how breadcrumbs are being used here by our client CVP, who are the leading global distributor of audio-visual equipment. But yeah, it's really effective use there. But interestingly, breadcrumbs, they're not just for e-commerce sites. They can be really effective on all types of sites too, such as B2B sites. So we utilize breadcrumbs during our client Ample again, touched on them earlier, their new website launched a few months back. It's just a really simple but effective way of reminding users where they are on the site and how they got there. And another tactic we considered when we were designing this new Ample site was by utilizing chat AI bots. So these bots are available 24/7. They provide assistance and information to users at any time, which is really, really convenient for them. It provides immediate responses to queries, reduces wait times, and it ultimately helps them in their decision making. So, for example, if you were to go onto Ample's website, you can see this on the screen. This is what pops up. And it gives you a few options straight away. It also uses, you can see there, good evening, and the bot's name is Emma. The subtle touches that make it a little bit more personalized, make it feel like to the user that they're not just talking to a robot. And then if I go back to CVP, we've also got something called faceted navigation. So this sounds fancy, but you'll have seen this before. So faceted navigation allows users to customize their search based on what they're looking for on the site. So we have a look at on the CVP website, a visitor may want a Sony camera that's within a certain price range and it has a particular frame rate. So that's three kind of USPs that they want to try and three needs that they want to try and find. Now, the faceted navigation will then provide the user with the options catered to these choices. Again, think of those 7 seconds. How can you appeal to your users straight away? How can you gain their attention straight away? And the last sort of navigation tactic a lot of sites tend to use is a search function. And you want to include a search bar that's easy to locate and use. So if we take a look at Conforte, who are one of our clients, they're global specialists in data security. They do that by using the classic magnifying glass icon. Again, think of that 7 second rule. The search function gives the user a quick way of finding something if they can't see a particular service or product straight away. Even if a user has a niche search, you can then show pages or products similar to that search term, which might be appealing to the user. So, for instance, when I was on Conforte, I literally just searched data. You can see there in the background, it's showing me related results based on around the term data. So, once you've nailed down how you want your users to navigate your site, it's now time to get them to convert. So, just going to run through a few tactics to bear in mind. So you want to start off by understanding your audience. Know your target audience's needs, their pain points, their preferences, and then tailor your CTAs to address these aspects and offer solutions or benefits that resonate with your audience. And once you've done that, you can then start to identify your goals. So what actions do you want your users, your website visitors to take? Do you want them to make a purchase? Do you want them to sign up for a newsletter? Do you want them to request for a quote? Or do you want them to schedule a demo? And also remember to use contrasting colors. So these colors will help to make your CTA stand out and draw attention to them. But just bear in mind, don't go wild. Choose colors that align with your brand, but they still stand out from the rest of the content. And as you can see, that's what we've done in a few areas on our site. And of course, any excuse to get Dan in the slides. He definitely didn't make a special request to get himself in the webinar. No,
You know me, mate. I
not
get FOMO. I get FOMO.
exactly. Right. Just
Yeah.
thinking of you. Just thinking of you. But the last thing that's crucial to nailing your CTAs is think about the placement of them. And a great place to start is putting a CTA above the fold. Now, for those that don't know, this is a term that originated from newspapers and broadsheets. Remember them? I mean, we've had a new apprentice join, Luca. He's only 18. I was joking around with him the other day. I didn't even know what they are. I didn't even know what newspapers are. But yeah, no. Think of how newspapers, when they're displayed outside like petrol stations, they're always folded. They only show the top half. Basically showing the most important bit of the content and the most important part of the page that they want to show. Now, in terms of what that means, and in terms of what above the fold means for your website, it means something that's visible without scrolling. So we've been working with Cloud Attribution for over a year now on their user experience, and this is how their site is looking today. So before, over a year ago, they didn't have these learn more and get in touch CTA buttons above the fold. We've also implemented a banner carousel, as you can see with the four dots in the middle of the screen on just up there. Now these are just both instant ways to showcase some of your key services in a matter of seconds. Again, feeding back into that 7-second rule that I keep going on about. And another tactic you can consider is utilizing CTAs in your menu navigation. So try to get phone numbers and email addresses into the menu nav to provide even quicker routes for your users to make an inquiry. But also remember to include obvious and actionable call to actions like contact us in there too, if you can. This is something we really strongly considered during another website build that we did for our client Laborams. They're a leading law firm in Hertfordshire.
Just to chip in on that one, something that's really interesting
Yes.
we've noticed on a few is that and James, I know you and I have worked alongside on some of these, is where we've ensured as well that the CTAs evolve or develop as the content goes on. So I've done some great bits and pieces where, very early on, you might have much softer CTAs that are driving, especially on organic SEO landing pages or content pages that are much more focused on perhaps finding out a bit more about the team or learning more about a product or a service. And then further down and deeper into content, your CTAs can become much, much more focused on the ultimate conversion. So contact to find out more, book now, book a demo, whatever that might be. And I guess the only interesting flip side to that is if you're running I guess kind of paid media campaigns, PPC campaigns, Google Ads campaigns, where you're really focusing on further down the funnel kind of keywords so that people are specifically looking for a product or a service, such as, weekend break in Coast, in Pembrokeshire, whatever, something that people are looking to book, then you want to get those, you can afford to get those slightly more, I guess, commercial call to actions much earlier on, because that the people that are actively searching for those conversion type keywords are going to be wanting to see that easy route to either contact or book or take the next action. So there's a lot of consideration, actually. I think it's just an interesting point, really, and James, I'm sure you got stuff on that, but that kind of to consider, I guess, in terms of where your CTAs are and what CTAs you're doing across the site, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's even like, even if people aren't inquiring about your service, say you want to hire new team members, think about those CTAs. You probably want to entice them to meet the team first. So you could use a CTA, say, meet the team or find out more about
Yeah.
us. And then after you've sort of built that kind of trust, if you like,
Trust.
and,
Yeah.
and, and
Yeah.
that interest in joining your company, you can then start to include CTAs that, okay, well, I want to apply now. I want to join now
Mm,
and stuff like that.
mm.
So yeah, that's just
Nate,
something
Nate,
to
Nathan's put a comment in the chat, so CTAs can be fluid. I think, yeah, absolutely. I think
100%.
it's about thinking about what the content is, what purpose it's serving, what action you hope for them to take next. If you've got a really juicy kind of blog content that's heavily informational, your call to action might actually be for the user to download something, to download a resource, to access something else, and then you've harnessed an email address, and maybe that sits in with part of your outbound marketing plan. Whereas yeah, if you've got a very service-driven landing page or a page that's heavily focused on a product, that CTA might be much more driven towards, yeah, a convert, So I would really think about how you're utilizing them, and even language, somewhere on the website you might be saying contact us, somewhere on the website you might be saying find out more. Now they might both take you to a contact page, but it's about what you're saying to the user at that point in their experience on the website. Are they in a place to contact you, or are they in a place to learn more, discover more, find out more? And so I think there's a lot in that. It's surprising you can't underestimate, I guess, the power of the language, right, James, that you're using on
That's
these
it.
CTAs, as well as what they're actually doing, like what the actual action is that you're trying to encourage.
That's it. That's it. Spot on, Dan. Yeah. And it's also a good idea to try and position your CTAs at the end of your service pages, so at the end of blog posts as well. So as we've done here in this blog on ChatGPT on our website, so we've got the right at the end there. So we don't necessarily have CTA buttons, if you like, but we've got those internal links again, taking users to try and make a phone call, make inquire via email, or fill in the contact form. But we've also got some buttons there taking users to our previous posts, or you want to go to the next post. It's just all about, again, just trying to keep that user journey flowing, keeping it going. And by the way, if you want to find out more about ChatGPT and the future of AI marketing, if you just scan that QR code, it's a really great blog, but written by our copywriter Catherine. Does amazing stuff. But yeah, check it out. Um, but just remember with all of these as well, consider A/B testing. So some CTAs might be really effective uh, on a certain position on the page, but they might be better further down on the page. It's just all about this testing, trying out different ways, and seeing which CTAs and positionings are more effective in certain areas. So if you've got your e-commerce hat on again, think about how you can make it easy for a user to buy your product. So this example from Amazon makes it obvious straight away. You've got your add to basket, buy now. But interestingly as well, it also gives options for different colors of the lamps, catering to your users' needs again. It's not just a one size fits all. And interestingly, when I was looking at this lamp on this product listing, so it comes up with this, and I'm sure most people will have seen this before. You've got this frequently bought together feature, or you might have seen something like you might also like that kind of feature. This is just another way for users to stay on your site, but also buy more products. If you're catering to their needs and you're helping them out, they're going to be interested. You're doing them a favor. And it's important to just remember, Amazon, obviously they're an e-commerce giant, but we can learn from the best. Think about if there's an opportunity for you to do it on your website. And one last placement tactic you can consider is with exit intent pop-ups. So these appear just as you hover over the little X cross as you want to leave a tab on desktop. It's one last chance for you to keep the user on the site, or give them an incentive to buy your product or inquire about your service. Now, in this example, this pop-up entices the user with a discount. And if the user's not bothered about the discount, they've also got the option just to simply go back to the site and continue shopping if they wish to. Now, the last area to keep in mind with your user experiences is how to make your content digestible and engaging for your users. And I'm going to run through 7 ways on how you can do this. It's funny how the number 7 is quite a recurring theme in this webinar. It wasn't planned, I promise. But again, first of all, start off by understanding your audience. Tailor your content to address their needs and align with their interests. Put yourself in your customer's shoes. What's going to be appealing to them? And you can do this with clear and concise writing. Keep it short and simple. Don't overcomplicate it with fancy words. Think about the tone of voice you want to use across your site. If you want to come across as relatable, use a conversational tone, just as if you're having a chat with the user. Or maybe you want to go down a more formal route. This is probably the better route to go down if you want to be perceived as a professional or an expert in your industry. But always remember to keep in mind that your content should always be providing value to your audience. Think, are you solving their problems? Are you answering their questions? Are you appealing to their needs? And then leading on from that, where do you want the reader to actually end up? And you can do that with internal linking and incorporating CTAs. Do you want to invite users to subscribe to your newsletter? Do you want to get in touch? And you want to take them to the contact page? And then you can also make your content digestible with visual elements. So images, infographics, videos, anything like that. They're all great for breaking up content. And don't forget as well, content itself can be visual too. Remember those Russian dolls that I touched on earlier? You can organize your content with clear subheadings, different font sizes, different colors, just to give a nice flow to the content. And I know that was 7 ways, and that'd be hard to remember, but here's a list of all those tactics just for you to refer back to should you need it when you're having a look at your site. And here they are being put into practice in our blog that I touched on earlier. This is our blog on ChatGPT. So not only does it use our Russian doll headings and imagery, it uses some other tactics that you could use. So the blog uses bullet points and lists, just helping to make the content more scannable. And then you've also got your white space. It just makes the page look less cluttered and makes the content look less intimidating. Imagine a page, come across a page that was all just words, no imagery, no colors. Oh, that would really put you off. So we've covered a few key areas of how to maximize your user experience this morning. But if there's a couple of main things to take away, it's firstly, always think mobile. There's a good chance your users will be on their phones than any other device. Your site may look great on a computer screen when you're at work, but maybe not on a phone, maybe not on a certain type of device. And secondly, remember, there's no such thing as a perfect website. Even if you make big changes to your site, it looks amazing, it looks really pretty. Remember to monitor and review your user behavior and interactions, and continue to constantly adapt your user experience design as you need to. And lastly, always remember that 7-second rule. So how are you going to appeal to your user straight away? How are you going to grab their attention? So here's 7 pictures related to the number 7 to help you remember that 7-second rule. Now, I want to give it a shout out to Jim Lewis, who some of you might be aware of. You might know he's our client relationship manager at Wagner. So as I was coming up with these 7, I was really struggling to think of a 7th item, ironically. I was thinking, well, what about band members? And I've ended up with S Club 7, but I do have to say, and caveat slightly, that Jim did say steps. He did say steps originally. So when I was presenting to the team and showing them about user experience, I did get picked up on, oh, by the way, that's not steps, that's S Club 7. So yeah, all good for today. So I was ready
I
for
think the
that.
biggest issue with that, James, is that there's only 5 people in steps as well, right? So it's not just that it was the wrong
I
band; it's that the
know,
number didn't even add up.
I know, I know. I just yeah. But anyway, he did inspire me in a weird way. Now, just to finish up, so we love sharing knowledge for free, but if you're feeling generous, we'd really appreciate a donation to chosen charity National Star. I know Dan touched on it at the start of the webinar. So donations only size. They'll help young people with disabilities get the specialist education they need to gain independence. So to find out more and donate, please visit the QR code that you can see on your screen. But yeah, now I'm going to hand back over to Dan for any questions there for the Q&A.
Perfect. Thank you so much, James. What I'm doing, I'm just very, very quickly popping the link in the chat to where you can donate. So if you did want to make a donation, even just a small gesture towards towards National Star, that would obviously be greatly appreciated. We share this knowledge for free, so if there is anything that you would like to do there for our charity partner, that would mean a lot to us and go a very, very long way. Right, before we crack on, I just want to say, brilliant. Thank you so much, James. There's so much useful content in there. And I think it's definitely food for thought. I think the most interesting thing with this sort of stuff is that it's constantly evolving, it's constantly updating, and if we did this webinar even 6 months ago, there might be different key insights and takeaways. So some of the current changes and ways that we can best, I guess, set up our website for users in the latter part of 2023 going into 2024 is a lot of food for thought. There's been a couple of questions that have come through. There's one that's come through privately, so I'll just touch upon that one first because it's a great question. Well, they're both great questions actually, but first things first, can you talk about understanding attribution rate and user experience if Google is looking to go cookieless in the upcoming years? So as things move away from cookies, what does that mean for data, Google Analytics, GA4? How's that all working, and how can we better analyze data kind of in the months and the years ahead, because we're moving away from that that place of cookies. Have you got any thoughts on that?
It's just, oh yeah, it's really something to bear in mind. Always being aware of that. Importantly as well, I'd say, Dan, is keeping on top of these updates. This constantly evolving, and a bit with user experience, just constantly evolving.
Yeah.
But yeah, something really important to bear in mind. I know you did a cookie specialist, absolute masterclass, didn't you, recently?
Good call. I should share that actually. We've
Yeah,
talked a lot about kind of where we're moving with cookies. That I think a big issue is that it, so much of it now is going to be based upon like machine learning and understanding. So it's taking trends and elements of data and then applying a degree of a view on what that actually means. So to give you an idea, with things like social media advertising, cookies were like fundamental to social media ads because, you would literally drive traffic to your website, get an audience engaged, and then very, very heavily, remarket using cookies so that you could get your ads in front of the right people that were already engaged to kind of convert really to make a purchase or to take an action. But obviously, as we move away from that, we have to approach it in a very different way. And even within social media platforms, so Meta, say Facebook and Insta ads, you're starting to look at what Facebook believes those ads have achieved in terms of conversion. So it takes a proportion of data and it says, right, well, actually, we believe it's contributed towards 20 conversions last week, whereas they might only have hard data for a much smaller number of that. The same is really said for Google Analytics. When we launched GA4 and there was a switch over from old school Google Analytics, which is called UA, Universal Analytics. When we took that move from UA to GA4, you could have the two things running at the same time, and it might give you some different numbers. Yeah, and that was because of how it was collecting and harvesting and processing data. So the interesting thing on that is that again, GA4 is even using elements of machine learning. I think more and more as we move on, the tools will be built to do that so that it's more and more accurate in terms of what anticipated traffic is rather than the actual numbers that they've got. But also then more and more as marketers, we just have to be smart. We have to work smarter. We have to process data and identify what that means to us. And so, yeah, I guess more and more we're looking at things like trends and trend analysis, but we're not always going to have the hard numbers that perhaps we were reliant upon years ago and for a large number of years, because that accuracy isn't quite the same. So I hope that sort of answers your question. It's more of a where we could be going kind of thing. But yeah, I think that's where AI, forecasting, machine learning, so that they can take trends and user behavior to go, well, what proportion of the real picture is that? And I think that's where things are gonna move to, because yeah, accuracy of data will just dwindle. We've got another question in here from Nathan. So if you were teaching someone to play football, you would tell them to watch and learn from some of the best teams, Man City, expected to lose, etc. Yeah, great team, great team. Where would you send people to have a look at the best UX websites you have come across? That's a great question. So yeah, I guess in terms of favorite websites or best places to engage, best brands. I know we talked about a couple of big players here, but James, any thoughts on that in terms of websites that really help kind of, I guess, capture the imagination, or that your kind of go-to websites and you admire the UX on that?
yeah. I mean, obviously you've got the obvious one, Amazon. Obviously
Yeah,
they're massive, aren't they? And they've absolutely nailed it down. But
yeah,
in terms of sites that I quite like using, so we've, funny enough, it was actually one of our clients, Dan. This CAE.
yeah,
I think they've got a really lovely the menu navigation, the way it flows. It's really nice to look at, but very aesthetically pleasing. But there's another site called WTF Creative, not WTF as in what you think it might mean. There's something else. But they kind of, their website is all about showcasing previous media work that they've done. They've done loads of film work and production work, and they don't have that much content on there. They don't really have a menu navigation. I don't know if you've come across it, Dan, if you've seen it, but it's just really visually appealing, and it's really smooth, very slick. But yeah, those are kind of ones that sort of stick out to me when you ask that question.
yeah, yeah. Interestingly as well, a number of brands have kind of, I think the you can learn a lot actually now from fashion and retail websites. So even if you're not working in that sector, from a UX perspective, it's really, really interesting. So I think it's ASOS. They have functionality on there whereby you know you can pump in details, gamification. So something we haven't really touched upon, but that I think is a really good takeaway at this point actually, is things like gamification. So things like I don't know if you're familiar with the brand Oddballs. They're like a predominantly rugby, but really like sporting kind of underwear, and they're all about raising awareness surrounding testicular cancer and things, and men's health. And they have a lot of gamification on the website in terms of offers. So literally like spin the wheel and you can either get a 10% discount code, or you can get a 5% discount code, or you can get a free something, or you don't get anything. And that kind of UX is really, really good to engage customers. Not only can you harness actual like email addresses and engagement and things, but you can also just really get them engaged in the purchase process. Another nice example, I guess, I think is like ASOS, where it can give you whole kind of estimates of, with that exact product, what size you should be buying, so that users are able to really
Yeah.
explore that.
It's funny
Whilst,
it's funny you say
sorry, go
that,
on.
Dan, because
Yeah,
when
yeah,
you said about ASOS, so we had so we had our Halloween party the other day.
yeah,
No, so Dan comes as Elton John. Great,
yeah.
great little
Hence the no
costume.
beard. Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
look more like Noel Edmonds, and then I took the beard off. Yeah, yeah,
no, I went as Del Boy, but I was looking for a red jumper, like a turtleneck, and I was on ASOS looking at, because you've got you've got the picture of the model of the screen, and how many times have you bought an item claiming like, oh yeah, that looks good, but yeah, because they're a model. Don't forget about your own sizes. But when I went on to ASOS, it took me through a process of, okay, what's your height, what's your age, what kind of fit, what kind of style do you want? If you want it to be tight, do you want it to be a bit more relaxed? But yeah, it was just perfect, and it gives you a recommendation of what size you should go for at the end. So out of different large, small, medium, whatever.
this is it. And I think the interesting thing with all of this is that um sorry, I'm just replying private to private questions and chats as well. I think and I think the interesting thing with all of that is, as I say, it's hooking the customer in more and more, right? Because you're using these things, you're using it like a tool, so it's not just an information source; it's a tool that you're actually able to engage with and use. We've seen cheers from CAE in the chat, so I just want to pump that website in as well to be able to ensure that people check that out. Now, the CAE website, for example, has a really nice user experience. It's clean, it's visual, it's a service driven brand, and yet they bring people to the forefront. And so yeah, from a UX perspective, it's obvious where you need to go, but there's enough dynamic things on page. I think more and more we're seeing dynamism, so it's not just static imagery, but it's ensuring that there's kind of engaging visual content, ways to really capture customer attention and keep people on site. We want people on site for longer, so it becomes an engaged session. That's a key metric now on GA4, for example, is not just sessions, but engaged sessions, people taking actions, people staying on site, and what they're actually doing. Fab. Any final questions? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Feel free to jump in and unmute, or to pop anything in the chat whilst you have James and I. No? Brilliant. Fab. We've got some lovely comments coming through. No questions. Thanks. Thoroughly enjoyed. Great session. Brilliant. Thank you. It was a really interesting session. Look, thank you, folks. As I say, if you do really useful webinar. Thank you, Daniel and James. Lots of ideas taken in as we continually try and improve our new website. And thank you for your fundraising efforts for us. It's much appreciated. A suggestion for another 7. We'll have a look at that one as well. I'm trying to get James to get the Magnificent 7 up there, and the 7 Samurai. And I didn't think he'd ever heard of either of them, which again just shows like
No,
generational shift.
I had heard
Oh,
of
you
them.
had? Oh, you're
Yeah,
saying
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
now.
yeah,
You're
yeah, yeah.
saying that
No,
now.
no.
But listen, thank you so much, folks. Please do feel free to donate to our charity partner, National Star. If you do feel so inclined to leave us a review on Google, we'll pop the details in the follow-up email as well. It goes a long, long way. So don't hesitate to shout about this on LinkedIn or any social channels, or to jump on to Google and drop us a note and tell us if you've enjoyed this session. So we will be sending you further details. We've got a whole calendar of webinars and events as well as we look ahead to 2024, which will be live shortly, as well as our podcast that's really starting to gain some traction on Spotify. And again, we'll pop all the details of that in the follow-up. So yeah, thank you again, James. Anything to sign off on there?
No, well, I touched on it at the start, but yeah, I want to hit that 500 mark on LinkedIn. So yeah,
Yeah,
get connected,
find
guys.
James on LinkedIn. Yeah,
No,
stroke
no,
his ego.
yeah. No,
Brilliant.
but seriously, thanks for joining. Hope it was useful today. But yeah, thanks for everyone for joining.